everyone, and welcome to this Sunday morning edition of Inside NASCAR. The Winston Cup Tour may have the weekend off, but there's all kinds of NASCAR action to keep you busy this afternoon right here on TNN. The Craftsman Truck Series is in Miami, Florida, while the Busch Grand National teams are in the glitter town of Las Vegas. Coming up next, we'll preview both events, plus here's a look at what else is ahead in this 1 hour of Inside NASCAR.
Are you wondering how to become a Winston Cup crew member? Well, coming up on today's show, we'll introduce you to some of the sport's best crew chiefs. They'll fill you in on how they hire the guys that help them get from the shop on Monday to victory lane on Sunday. Over the years, Hueytown has become the racing capital of the state of Alabama, thanks to names like Allison, Bonnet, and Farmer. Trying to rekindle that magic is BG and newcomer Doug Reed III, and we'll introduce you to the newest pride of Hueytown. With more than 18 years of service for Richard Childress Racing, Davis Smith made his way to the top of the ladder last year as Dale Earnhardt's crew chief. With limited success in '96, Smith will now head Mike Skinner's rookie run in Winston Cup racing. We'll talk to the veteran wrench coming up on today's edition of Inside NASCAR.
Today's show is brought to you by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. And by Miller Lite. With the great taste of an ice-cold Miller Lite, life is good. And by Napa Auto Parts. At Napa, we keep America running.
For the second straight week, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series is in action, this time at the Homestead Motorsports Complex in Miami, Florida. And once again, the series is proving to be so popular that practically everyone is trying to make the show. Over 50 trucks tried to qualify yesterday for the Florida Dodge Dealers 400. Joe Ruttman claimed his second Truck Series career pole, his first for the season. His LCI Ford turned in a lap of 140.221 miles an hour.
This is exciting. We've been working hard for it, and the guys really deserve it because they just put a tremendous truck under me, and it just zoomed fast, and I was just grinning and just did everything perfect, so I was having a good time.
This third stop in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series has brought about some changes. Earlier in the week, Dave Rezendes and truck owner Jeff Bodine parted ways. Rezendes has moved over to the Ortho Lawn and Garden Chevy, once driven by Lonnie Rush. He goes out today 8th.
Ortho's got a big deal going on down here, so I tried to make them happy, and I tried to leave on good terms where I was, and which I did. Jeff and I left with a handshake and a smile, and the guys are okay with it, and so I'm looking forward to it.
Meanwhile, Bodine has put his son Barry in the number 7 truck for today's race. He'll roll off 12th. Several Winston Cup regulars have found this weekend too tough to pass up. Former Truck Series champion Mike Skinner is using the Lumar ride to his advantage.
You know, we're trying to build for the 31 car and for Lowe's and for RCR. So every lap we make on the racetrack together, we get a little better.
A cool new sponsor is getting into racing. The National Hockey League has signed on as the primary sponsor of Lance Norrick's number 90 Ford. And tomorrow marks the start of reconstruction on the 1.5-mile Homestead track. The current quad oval is being converted into a more conventional oval. Track officials are hoping the change will help land a Winston Cup event. And speaking of Winston Cup, Series rookie Robbie Gordon returned to his open wheel background yesterday, testing an IRL car at Charlotte, where he plans to run with the series in July.
Between the Indy car and been back and forth to the Winston Cup car and testing and doing all the sponsor appearances we need to do to make this program successful. There's not much time left in the day, but we're trying to get a good group of guys together for both programs where we can be competitive and they can go off and do their own thing.
We can assure you that Gordon is nowhere in today's truck starting lineup, where Ruttman is joined on the front row by rookie driver Boris Said, who also competed in yesterday's 12 Hours of Sebring. On row 2, it's NASCAR veteran Chuck Bound next to Dana Dodge driver Michael Dokken. Rookie Kenny Irwin and Mike Bliss make up row 3, followed by Rick Corelli and Dave Rezendes in his new ride. And rounding out the top 10 starters are John Nemechek and Rich Bickle. It's been a busy week for all of NASCAR's top 3 divisions. Before the Busch Series even headed to Vegas this weekend, there was lots of work to be done along the way for both the Busch and some Winston Cup guys. Our Tyler Potter has been tagging along and has this report.
Good morning, Stephanie, and welcome to Las Vegas. We are at the brand new Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the inaugural Las Vegas 300. Now, on the way to Nevada, Busch and Winston Cup drivers tested out another new track, the Texas Motor Speedway. The Busch cars were the first on the track, and while drivers differed on which speedway Texas is most similar to, there was no arguing the speed and how beneficial the test period was.
We probably picked up a second from how we went on the racetrack the first time, or the speed we ran the first time. We picked up a second throughout the course of the day. So, that's a second that we won't have to learn when we come back here. So now hopefully we can maybe get another half a second on top of what we've already learned, and then we'll be right in the ballpark. Well, actually, we're right in the ballpark right now. So just a matter when we get back, and we'll see how, with all the cars here, see how fast they can go and see where we stack up.
Wednesday was supposed to be the first day of testing for Winston Cup drivers, but rain prevented that. So the teams gathered inside for a good old-fashioned Texas barbecue.
This is the way they eat in Texas, I guess. This is a little light lunch,
That's a light lunch?
Yeah, well, there's nothing else to do, so thought we'd chow down.
What do you like the best out of all that?
I have no earthly idea. It's just a little, it's just a little something to eat. There's a few ribs and some chicken, brisket, I don't know, beans. You got me a jalapeno there.
Any idea how to eat that jalapeno?
Slowly. Slowly with a lot of iced tea.
Following the lunch, TMS General Manager Eddie Gossage announced the record purse of over $4.5 million for the Interstate Batteries 500 weekend.
The inaugural Interstate Batteries 500 NASCAR Winston Cup race will offer the fourth largest purse in NASCAR Winston Cup history. $3,802,255. In first place in the inaugural Interstate Batteries 500 will pay $340,650 plus contingencies. Now, to give you a yardstick, that's 3 times the Darlington purse. Now, like you guys, we're not going to take the easy way out. We're stepping up, and that's all I got to say. And I just want to know who wants it.
I'm going to stay right here and wait for the 2 bags.
We asked for you to show us some money. You showed us some money, so we're ready to get out there.
And show the money they did as armed guards delivered $2 million for the drivers to handle. Dallas Cowboys quarterback Troy Aikman was also on hand. He's hosting a 25-lap Legends Celebrity Race for charity on April 3rd. When the Cup drivers did hit the 1.5-mile super speedway for the first time Thursday, Turn 1 posed the greatest challenge. Just ask Johnny Benson and Robbie Gordon. Both of them hit the wall.
It's one of those deals. You go out here and run, and you try to qualify or try to run fast without, without a lot of laps on the track, and it's going to bite you. But I got a little loose and saved it and had it saved, but then got up in the marbles and lost it again. So, things happen.
The track's configuration was very much on the mind of Dale Earnhardt, who blasted the layout in Thursday's Dallas Morning News, saying, among other things, it wouldn't make for great racing.
The corner still falls off, and it's still treacherous getting in one. Nothing's changed from what I said yesterday, but that's my opinion, and everybody's got an opinion. I'm not bad-mouthing their racetrack. They got a beautiful racetrack, beautiful garage area, beautiful facility. It'll be nice to race on.
In Busch News, Jeff Purvis is out, and ARCA driver Tim Steele is in, at least for this week, in the number 4 car. Purvis and car owner James Finch part ways after 11 years. Jeff Green won the pole for Sunday's race with a time of 33.896 seconds for a speed of 159.311 miles per hour. Defending champion Randy LaJoie and rookie Steve Park were the last 2 drivers out in Friday's qualifying. Both crashed, LaJoie in turn 2, Park between 3 and 4. They had to run second round qualifying, but with only 40 cars, both drivers were assured of making today's race. Stephanie, back to you.
Thanks, Tyler. So despite the fact that they still don't have sponsorship, teammates Jeff Green and Elliott Sadler share the front row for today's Las Vegas 300. Sadler's brother Hermie rolls off on row 2 behind Winston Cup regular Joe Nemechek. On row 3, it's Buckshot Jones and Elton Sawyer in the Barbasol Ford. And the pole sitter's brother Mark Green is on row 4 alongside Tim Fedewa in the Kleenex Chevy, while Todd Bodine and Glenn Allen round out the top 10 starting positions. Well, that's all the time we have for this segment of Inside NASCAR. But when we come back, Ned will join you from the new shops of Team Rainier Walsh. Don't forget, the Truck Series takes the green flag just after 12:30 p.m. Eastern on TNN. And then at 4 o'clock Eastern, it's a NASCAR doubleheader with the Busch Grand National Series in Las Vegas. So keep it here on TNN and enjoy your racing Sunday.
Team Rainier Walsh is a relatively new team, but they already have a lot of things going in NASCAR racing. Harry Rainier started the team that is now Robert Yates Racing and then sold it to Robert and is now back in. It's good to see him back in the sport. He's teamed up now with Tom Walsh to form Team Rainier Walsh. Stephanie Boyd talked to them this week while we were here about the things they have going on and their plans for the future.
Long before Robert Yates took over as owner of the number 28 machines in the Winston Cup Series, Harry Rainier had already made the number famous. He was the owner when legends like Cale Yarborough, Buddy Baker, and Bobby Allison drove the 28, and he was the guy who first put Davey Allison behind the wheel of that car in 1987 when Allison was the runaway Rookie of the Year winner. But at the end of '88, Rainier sold the team to Yates and got out of racing, only to return to the sport nearly a decade later.
In my mind, I've never really been out of it, but my sons never really forgave me for getting out, and we've just looked over the past few years at the right opportunity. If the right opportunity presented itself, we'd like to get back in it, and which fortunately it did.
In 1996, Rainier teamed up with Florida businessman Tom Walsh to run a limited Busch schedule with Tony Stewart as the driver. But it wasn't long before their partnership started to mushroom. Now, just over a year later, Team Rainier Walsh is fielding a full-time Winston Cup effort with Greg Sachs in the pilot's seat, a full-time truck team with rookie Toby Porter, and is planning a limited number of races with Stewart in Busch Truck and Winston Cup.
We're ambitious sort of people. We're sort of on a fast track. We've been there before, and we realize what it takes, and we can short circuit a lot of the problems that somebody coming into the business that just wants to be in racing. We can sort of circumvent a lot of those things. But there is a lot to do before we get to where we want to be, and it's taking a lot of work, taking a lot of people, and I think we're going to get there pretty soon.
Where do you want to be?
Well, we want to be back on top in Winston Cup racing like we were when we got out in the late 80s. And I think that's an achievable goal with the personnel, as I said, that we have and the resources that we have from our associates. I think with Tom Walsh's input and the people that we have on board in this organization, I think we'll be there a lot sooner than everybody thinks we will.
It's been a lot to put together. You couldn't put it together without a great team. It always will be a team sport, and it's Team Rainier Walsh. Tommy Baldwin here has just done a fantastic job building the cars. Fred Graves over there with the truck. Just in October, we literally didn't have any cars. All these things have been constructed here just in the last 5-6 months or so. So we've got 9 cars built now, developing some other chassis right now. Fred has put together 5 real nice trucks. Bob Burnham over there at the engine shop putting everything together for the truck. It really, truly is a perfect example of a team sport.
While the new operation once again teams Rainier up with his old sponsor, Hardee's, he's now also teaming up with one of his former drivers, Bobby Allison. Rainier Walsh is leasing Allison's race shop in North Carolina and plans to run the 12 car in a handful of races this year with either Stewart or Porter behind the wheel. They're also looking for full-time sponsorship for the 12 car for the 1998 season.
Bobby and I have been close since back early 80s when he drove for us before. And of course, Davey came along, as you well know, and that sort of solidified the relationship a little tighter. And of course, we certainly was helpless, you know, during Bobby's tragic times as everybody else was. We couldn't lend a hand in any way at that time, but we feel like at this particular time we can give some input that might help Bobby and help him progress a little farther than he is right now.
Yeah, we're here to help. It's pretty sad situation there, and it's got to have another chapter besides the way this one's been presented here in the past. Hopefully we can put something together here for the 12. We're still seeking some sponsorship. We're out there building some cars right now to help reestablish the 12. Hopefully at the end of this year we can go in there maybe 4 or 5 races, and all the fans will be up there to see Bobby Allison's car on the track again. And that's really our goal.
Rainier Walsh would continue to manage the team should things work out, as well as running their own operation with Sachs in the 20 car. The team is also being used as a model for a Fox TV movie and possible series by the producers of Baywatch, but they're quick to point out that their first priority is performing on the track.
Pretty much nobody gives you anything in this business. You've got to go in and earn it, and we've tested well at Daytona, had a lot of success there during the month of January. Tested well at Richmond, and unfortunately with the weather that got socked in there, we were one of the teams that went home. We were the quickest team there in testing, one of the quickest teams in Daytona throughout testing. Opportunity will be there for us, but we just haven't capitalized on that. But it'll come. You have to earn your respect in this business. Nobody's going to give it to you.
Is this fulfilling to you?
Very much so. It's something that it's a little different this time, because always before being involved with stock car racing, I've been an absentee owner. This has been the first time that I've ever been involved in this sport where I had a day-to-day hands-on type position. And it's almost like a kid with a toy, because I've never gotten to do the things that I wanted to before.
And how far do you see you guys going?
We're going to the top. We're going all the way, just where we were when I quit.
Hello, I'm Joe Prince from JPR Safety Equipment, and this is Jack Yetman. This is a new piece of equipment for 1997 season. It's a carbon monoxide eliminator. The sole purpose of this machine is to supply the driver with fresh, clean driving air. Now, the way this machine works is there's a fresh air duct that is high pressure air that goes into this side of the box. The dirty air gets cycled through the catalyst and a 3-stage filter system, in turn getting piped out to the driver's helmet. This machine is going to do one of 3 jobs. Number 1, it's going to make a safer driver. Number 2, it'll make a more competitive driver. And number 3, it'll save the driver from having long-term carbon monoxide poisoning problems. This machine is going to be available May of 1997 through BSR Industries.
The crew here at Team Rainier Walsh getting one of the Hardee's Fords ready to go for Greg Sachs to take to the racetrack. How do you become a crew member in NASCAR racing? That question is often asked. Well, Tyler Potter has a story on it.
You know, for a lot of these Winston Cup teams, making it as a crew member is the culmination of many years of hard work. Do you think you have what it takes to get to this level? We talked to some prominent crew chiefs about their careers and what they look for in a crew member.
Well, if you follow the lines that I did, you just picked up all your stuff, and you know, I had $90 in my pocket and a few hand tools, and I moved from upstate New York to North Carolina back in '79. And a lot of times that's just what it takes. You have to show desire in order to get in.
You're looking for experienced people, of course, but there's just not that many of them around. You know, I look for people that really have the desire and the intelligence to do it. You know, you can take someone who's intelligent and has desire, and they can learn to do anything that there is. This business is a lot about commitment, and there's so many people from the outside that I don't think they really realize the kind of commitment that it takes to do this. The people that do this week to weekend that are good at it have made a lot of sacrifices in their life. It takes a special kind of a person.
Nobody knows that better than Jasper's Mike Harrell. For a year and a half, he paid his own way to all the races, often sleeping on hotel room floors just to get the opportunity to work on a Winston Cup crew. It all paid off January 1st when Mike was hired full-time as shop organizer.
Definitely a relief, you know, getting hired full-time this year, and the hotels are a lot nicer. I don't have to drive as much. So it's definitely eased up, but it's all worth it. The work's gotten harder and the hours are longer, but it's definitely worth it.
It's a little easier for a more established team to take somebody on like that because they already have their experienced people in place. So as a first-year team, we really need more experienced people because we are a first-year Winston Cup team.
The positions on a Winston Cup crew include 2 tire changers, 2 tire carriers, jack man, gas man, catch can man, window washer, grill cleaner, pit board, gas runners, mileage loggers, tire measurers who also air the tires as well as maintain tire selection for the race, and crew chief.
They're all important. You know, even a guy handing the drink of water in, if he dumps it on the driver's lap and the driver's not paying attention when the jack's dropping, you know, it costs you a position on the racetrack.
The number of people on a crew can vary. For example, the 77 team is comprised of 15 people. Penske has around 18, while the Hendrick-owned 24 team uses a crew between 22 and 25 to compete on a race weekend.
It's just a matter of what level you want to compete on. And we've got people that do things probably that other teams don't do. We have people that just watch other teams for me and tape things and keep records and notes, and we bring backup pit crew members and things like that. If a tire changer, you're in a championship battle and a tire changer would have hurt his ankle on pit road, what do you do? So we actually have some backup people.
A crew chief is both a mechanic and manager, dealing with team members in sometimes adverse conditions.
Well, you know, it gets that way, you know, after about, when you're in one of them 16, 17-week stretch, you know, everybody starts getting just a little bit on each other's toes, and that's where, you know, you just got to call each one of them off the side and say, look, you know, we're working together. Let's just, you know, calm down a little bit and just go after our job and make sure everything's done.
But the job has its upside, too.
You know, there's guys here that, you know, some guys have won a lot of races and some guys are fairly new, and we actually had a couple guys win at Daytona with us for the first time, and that's, you know, it's always new and refreshing when you see people that have made a lot of sacrifice get rewarded for it.
Completely happy. There are days that you definitely would trade it in for a suntan oil place on the beach, but you know, where else would you be? You know, you work with a lot of nice people, and you know, sometimes you get to travel and sometimes you have to travel. And you know, at this point in my life, it's a little late to trade it in, and I'm not so sure I would anyway.
Well, thanks, Tyler. Coming up right after this break, we'll talk to a guy who doesn't need a job. He's been entrenched in this sport for a long time, David Smith. We'll have his story when we come back.
I'm just sorry the way that it all ended up, you know, because we were off to a pretty good start for the year, and we were right there in the point chase, and we did have good opportunities, and I still felt, you know, you look back and say, boy, if that, but the wreck was finished, and I hate it happened for us because I still believe we'd have been right there at the end of the year.
Probably a dune buggy, I guess, was the first one of those fiberglass. I don't know what model it was, but it was had a fiberglass body on it, and that was the first vehicle I ever drove.
It was a 53 GMC pickup truck. Actually, I drove a old Volkswagen pickup truck before then when I was just a little kid. I used to sit on my dad's lap and steer that.
First personal car, 56 Chevrolet hardtop. How about the first race car? 56, not the name, was it? 56 Ford hardtop.
I had a 73 Chevelle that I saved up money for to drive on the street. First race car I drove was an open wheel modified when I was about 21.
Just about every established crew member in NASCAR racing has their own toolbox, but you notice they do have wheels on them in case they want to change jobs. They just roll it out of one shop into another. Now, there's one guy in the sport who hasn't changed jobs too often, and that's David Smith. He's with the Richard Childress Racing organization and been there quite a while. And he's held several different jobs there and has a new one this year. He's team manager on the Lowe's Chevrolets, which are driven by rookie driver Mike Skinner in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. And Brett McMillan has the story on David Smith.
When Andy Petrie left Richard Childress Racing after the '95 season, one of the most respected yet maybe intimidating jobs in Winston Cup racing sat vacant. Who would lead Dale Earnhardt's charge toward his unprecedented 8th championship? Well, the nod went to 18-year RCR veteran David Smith, who was more than happy to accept the role and the pressure to perform that went with it.
Well, I was very pleased with that. I'd worked a long time with Richard Childress Racing and hoped that one day I would get an opportunity to be a crew chief there. And that came about. And so that was, I was very happy, to be able to try to do that.
1996 started with a bang for the RCR camp as Earnhardt picked up yet another second-place finish in the Daytona 500. Then he went on to win at Rockingham and Atlanta. With 2 wins in the first 4 races, the thought never crossed anybody's mind that Atlanta would be the last time they'd get to victory lane.
I just really felt like we had a good combination. I felt like we had the people there still that would get the job done. And I really believe that the first half of that year we were accomplishing that.
Terrible crash. Front of the field all torn up. Earnhardt's car destroyed. A major crash.
Earnhardt looked to be in contention for win number 3 of the '96 season and hopefully righting that wayward ship that was his Goodwrench Chevy at Talladega. Instead, it was that 3 car that went spinning on its roof, out of control through the tri-oval.
I guess it was, sometime after the wreck, but maybe that compounded it some. I don't know, but, we had a little stretch there in the summer where a couple of races were a little bit off, we didn't do as well as we should have. And, that upset everybody somewhat, we knew we were better than that. Then, of course, the wreck came along, and that, he went upside down, our whole team went upside down, basically. I really don't still understand everything about that.
With injury added to a somewhat insulting season, Earnhardt would give up the hallowed cockpit the next week at Indy while recovering from a bruised sternum and a broken collarbone. While things may have been at their lowest that weekend in August, David Smith never doubted his ability as a crew chief to get the job done.
I always believed I could, and I still believe I can. It's obvious now I can't do it with Dale Earnhardt. I love Dale Earnhardt to death. He's still my favorite. And but for whatever reason, he and I couldn't click like we needed to click. I mean, that's about all I can put, the way I can explain it. He wanted something that I couldn't give him, I guess, communication-wise, or, I always felt, that I could make the cars do what they wanted to, what they needed to, and I still believe that. But for whatever reason, that Dale decided he needed, somebody different, that's fine. I understood that going in. That, that if things didn't go good, that, hey, I may not be able to keep doing that, but I was thankful for the opportunity, I realized a major goal in my life. But, and I'm just sorry the way that it all ended up, because we were off to a pretty good start for the year, and we were right there in the point chase, and we did have good opportunities, and I still felt, you look back and say, boy, if that. But the wreck was big, and I hate it happened for us because I still believe we'd have been right there at the end of the year.
From the disappointment of not winning the title with Dale Earnhardt comes the determination and desire to succeed as team manager for the other member of the RCR stable, rookie Mike Skinner.
I feel at home there. At first, it was a big disappointment that I wasn't going to be with the 3 car. That was the biggest thing, was having to get away from the 3 car. I've always been with the 3 car. And that was a real big disappointment in my life. But I realized that the potential of this team and what can happen here and how we can make it grow and be something competitive just like the 3 car is there. So I like that opportunity. And then we got a brand new facility and that's really nice. And, you know, we just got a lot of promise and hope here, I think.
Much of the talk around Winston Cup racing for the past few years is centered around multi-car teams. Now you can add the Earnhardt-Skinner tandem to the mix. But are they truly a team? Or is the number 31 another way of helping Dale Earnhardt win that 8th championship?
I don't know that Dale Earnhardt needs it as much as this team needs it. It's going to benefit Dale because, again, of the extra testing we can do. It's going to benefit him at the super speedways where we can draft with him and stay, you know, we got to work on the pit stops, obviously, and make sure we stay up there in the lead hunt, you know, in the draft. But so far, you know, we've seen a lot of cooperation between Dale and Mike, between Larry and Kevin, and, you know, Bobby and myself, the whole organization. Everybody says, hey, this is going to work because we're going to make it work. And it's going to benefit us because that's what it's designed for. And I look for good things for both teams as a result that we see here.
The Inside NASCAR mailbox is brought to you by Chase Authentics. Our question today is from Junior Cassidy from Hamilton, Ohio. When qualifying is rained out after part of the field has run, can those teams work on their race setup before the rest of the field qualifies?
I'm Kevin Triplett, Manager of Communications for NASCAR, and that's a good question, Junior. The answer very simply is no. The entire field must be set before teams can proceed to get ready for the race. If we cannot get the rest of the field qualified, then we will revert and go by points and postmarks. If not, we will qualify the next day. Then they can get ready for the race. Thanks for writing in.
Send us your question on a postcard, and if it's used, you'll receive this fabulous shirt and cap from Chase Authentics, the choice of champions, the authentic trackside apparel of NASCAR.
The state of Alabama continues to produce some great race drivers. Another young man's trying to make his way in the sport, Doug Reed III. We'll have a story on him when we come back. Over the years, a lot of great race drivers have called the state of Alabama home. The Allisons, the late Neil Bonnet, Red Farmer, Steve Grissom, Hut Strickland, the list goes on and on. Now there's another young man, Doug Reed III, who's trying to make his way into professional auto racing. He's running in the NASCAR Busch Series, and Stephanie Boyd has his story.
Even though Doug Reed is only in his first year of Busch Grand National racing, there was little doubt he'd wind up in one of NASCAR's top divisions. After all, the 22-year-old driver is from Hueytown, Alabama, a place that's produced some of the greatest talent in the sport.
When I was growing up in racing, you know, I grew up around Bobby and Davey and Donnie and Neil and Clifford and all them, and it was pretty much all I ever knew was racing. I thought racing was everywhere, you know. Several years ago, if you'd have said, you know, Hueytown, Alabama, everybody knew what you was talking about because that was the racing capital, so. And I guess that's all I ever knew was about racing.
So it was only natural that by the time he was 9, Reed talked his dad into letting him get behind the wheel. At first, it was the go-kart circuit, where he won 5 national titles before moving on to the bigger machines.
Well, I run late models and all around Birmingham at BIR and run some All-Star and Winston All-Pro races. But the last 3 years I'd been running ARCA. I got a chance to run some ARCA races and had, you know, a good bit of success in that, a couple of poles. Last year we didn't run but about 6 races, and this year I got the opportunity. Red called. He was working with the Med Partners people. He called me and asked me if I wanted to drive their Busch car this year, and that was just the most exciting thing in the world to have Red Farmer call and ask me if I wanted to drive their car, so that was great.
Of course, Red Farmer was one of the original members of the Alabama gang, which also included guys like Neil Bonnet, Bobby and Donnie Allison, and later Bobby's sons Davey and Clifford. Pretty big shoes to try and fill, but Reed says he doesn't see it that way.
Well, you know, I never really thought about it until I was at Daytona. You know, I would never say I was a member of the Alabama gang, you know, because that was originally Bobby, Donnie, Red, Neil. You know, they come up and racing was a lot different back then. I kind of wish it was that way now. They race 50 and 60 times a year, and you know, them doing that, you know, you have a tremendous amount of respect for them. It's a lot different now. You know, Davey and Bobby, I never really seen them the way other people did because I was around them all the time. And now that I'm to this point, I'm at Daytona. I said, man, I'm NASCAR Busch Grand National racing. This is big, It's not Winston Cup racing yet, but still, this is big time, and it's really a dream for me. And you sit there and look back at, Davey come through these ranks. Bobby was in the Grand National division, and this is where it all begins, and this is where you got to be here to get to the top. And you kind of think, if Davey was here, what would he think? I think about that a lot. Davey, Clifford, Neil, it's really something to be here, and I wish they was here to see me.
For now, Farmer will have to serve as the eyes and ears of the Alabama gang as he and car owner Bart Walker try to bring Reed along on the Busch Grand National Tour. The team plans to run about 18 races this year and might even try to qualify for a Winston Cup event.
Bobby and Donnie and Red and Neil and Davey and Clifford, they put Hueytown on the map, Hueytown, Alabama. That's, it's famous. You think, they done that, and now it's really, I'm the only one left from Hueytown that's racing, and just out of respect for them, I'd like to do good because I know they'd like to see that. They'd like to see me do good, just, but I kind of feel like when I strap in the car, you want to go out there. Everybody has a ritual. I always get in the car. Me and my dad always say a little prayer. And before the race, I always kind of, look up and maybe talk to Davey and them and say, let's go out there and have a good race, because I know if they could, they'd be right there with me.
With it being an off weekend for Winston Cup, we thought we would give you a Darlington bonus. In 1990, Jeff Bodine was the early dominator. After starting on the pole, he led 154 laps. Ernie Irvin started third, but he went for a slide while battling with Bodine for the lead. Just past halfway, Ken Schrader in the Kodiak car was on the point when Irvin in the 4 tried to get a lap back. The wreck collected 13 cars, including Neil Bonnet in the Citgo Ford. This was the crash which triggered an early retirement for Bonnet due to head injuries and amnesia. Irvin was 10 laps down when the crash occurred. There were 10 cautions that day in April 1990. This one involved Kyle Petty in the 42, Ricky Brutt in the 5, Rusty Wallace in the 27, and Davey Allison. In the closing laps, it was a fierce battle for the top spot between Dale Earnhardt in the 3 and Morgan Shepherd in the 15, with the advantage to Shepherd. Then Dick Trickle crashed, collecting Alan Kulwicki in the 7. Most everyone decided to stop for fuel and fresh tires. After the restart, Shepherd was still on the point, but he gave Earnhardt just enough room to go by on the inside for the final lead change of the afternoon. The yellow flew with just a handful of laps left. Mark Martin in the Folgers car gave it one last shot with 4 laps to go, but there was no catching Dale Earnhardt as he held on for his second straight win at the track they call Too Tough to Tame. Third went to Davey Allison, followed by Jeff Bodine, who rallied for the 4th spot after that big crash on lap 212. Rounding out the top 5 on April Fool's Day 1990 was Morgan Shepherd.
The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series is in Homestead, Florida this weekend. The NASCAR Busch Series in Las Vegas, Nevada. They'll move with the Winston Cup drivers to the Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina next weekend. Well, talk about next weekend. Let's take a look at what we have coming up right here on TNN on Inside NASCAR.
Following the Prime Star 500 at Atlanta Motor Speedway last weekend, the Bulldozers and Backhoes were next to take the track as the mile-and-a-half speedway takes on a new look. We'll talk to some of the key players in the garage area and see how they plan to get ready for the new layout when they go back in November for the 97 season finale. In just 3 weeks, the Winston Cup and Busch Grand National cars will attack the new Texas Motor Speedway for the first time. Until this week, Mark Martin was the only driver with laps on the Texas asphalt, but this week the Cup and BGN cars had their first test sessions prior to the upcoming race. We'll have all the action from the Lone Star State. Phil Parsons has started 97 like one would expect a veteran to, as he sits 4th in the point standings heading to Las Vegas this weekend. Now, Parsons is the only driver who's been in the series for all 16 years of its existence. Our Glenn Jarrett will talk to the BGN veteran about his quick start to 1997. All this coming up next week on Inside NASCAR.
A lot of these Goodyear Eagle racing tires are used every weekend in NASCAR racing. What happens to all of those tires? Well, some have found a unique way of using them, and that is the subject of this week's Inside NASCAR Profile.
As NASCAR racing continues its monumental growth in popularity, the race fans continue to search for that mine's better than yours collectible. In support of the National Motorsports Press Association, race teams are donating used tires, which are being made into collectible dartboards and mirrors.
What we're doing is we're trying to raise money for the National Motorsports Press Association. They've got two projects that they try to fund from various ways of raising money. And we come up with an idea of cutting down the used Winston Cup tires, which you see behind me, and making dartboards and mirrors out of them. And we sell them to the fans through collectible stores and a small dealer network that we have for $29.95.
Now, for the serious souvenir collectors out there is a way to find out the authenticity of the tire that makes up the dartboard or mirror you purchase.
Well, we can guarantee the fans that they were actually raced at a Winston Cup Series track, and each tire has a compound number, and that compound will tell the fan, if they call us, what racetrack that tire was raced at, okay? They can call area code 704-662-6464.
Not only are the tires a great collector's item, but it's also environmentally safe and taking a major cost away from the owners.
We're actually doing the team owners a favor because they have to dispose of these tires, and it costs them money to dispose of them. We take care of that for them. We cut the tires down, and we have several other ways we can dispose of that tire, which makes it a win-win situation for everybody.
Well, that's all the time we have for this show. We hope you enjoyed it, and our thanks to all the folks here at the Team Rainier Walsh for allowing us to show you around their shops. You join us again here on TNN for more on Inside NASCAR.